Let's begin.
Oh, hey there, guys. Welcome back to another Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Sorry, I just laid down there for a moment. Must have dozed off. It's not entirely my fault. The enticement of sleep is hard to resist to the weary. But sometimes it's not dreams that call you, rather, what lives there. So, brew a cup of coffee and don't nod off. It's time to begin one hell of an epic nightmare. Dreamscape, Part 1, The Awakening.
I've been awake for days now, drinking an obscene amount of coffee just to stay awake, just to keep myself from slipping into the dark unconsciousness. When I close my eyes, I see them. They are always there. The things that exist between planes, the shadows that should not exist. The nightmare beings, the creatures that feed on the deepest of fears. I mustn't get ahead of myself. Let me explain how this all began. Let me explain the madness that would be. I had been working with my uncle, helping him to flip houses. We would find old houses for literally pennies on the dollar. Old, run-down buildings where dreams had been made and broken. The houses were merely shells of their former selves. They had been long left decrepit, and we would gut them and replace everything from floor to ceiling, from wall to wall, turning the dark, run-down houses into beautiful, comfy homes. We had recently acquired a large mansion that looked to have been built over a century ago, and it was in rough shape. The walls were patched with black mold, inside and out. The ceilings and walls had holes where rats and other such critters had crawled and scurried about for many decades, and the place stunk of a rotten and musty smell. The floors were unfit to walk across in most places, and one misstep could have left you with a broken ankle or something worse. This place was not fit for man nor beast. I remember thinking, this sure will be a challenge, but we can manage it. After all, we had flipped houses just as in bad of shape, if not worse before. We didn't have the money for a hotel room, so we had to work through the night and sleep there in that disgusting house. My uncle took the living room, and I decided to sleep on the floor in a room up on the second floor, probably the only room on the second floor that had a sound and secure floor, unlike the rest of the rooms, which probably would have resulted in my death if I had ventured into them in the darkness. During the first night, while I was trying to get to sleep, I would continuously hear scratching in the walls. Surely it was the rats scurrying about within them. I had a fear of waking up with a rat sitting on me, and in a place like this, it was more than likely to happen than not. So, I stayed awake for as long as I could, knowing that I would be exhausted the next day from lack of sleep. I wished I had just gone to sleep, because I had found myself afraid of every creak and sound of the house settling. The place had an eerie feel about it, a heaviness. Now and then, I even thought I saw movement within the shadows. I can't be sure because I couldn't even see my foot in front of my face in the darkness of the night, but I thought I would see a shadow moving twisting and turning in obscene and disturbing ways. Soon, I drifted off to sleep, despite the fear of the rats and the shadows. Early in the morning, I awoke to the sound of footsteps running down the hall. I was confused as to why my uncle would have been running up and down the hallway, but I shrugged it off and got up to get to work on the house again. I walked down the stairs to find my uncle still asleep on the rickety, old living room floor. I stopped for a moment, just looking over at him, confused with the sound of running footsteps I had just heard moments earlier. My uncle awoke and I looked away so that he wouldn't wonder as to why the hell I was staring at him and watching him in his sleep with a confused look on my face. On the second day, we worked on some of the bedrooms on the second floor, ripping off the walls and pulling out the old, rotten, waterlogged insulation within them. As we gutted the second floor walls, the smell of rotten meat filled the air, growing stronger and stronger with each wall we broke down. Despite the fact that the smell grew worse and worse as we worked, we could never quite pinpoint the source of the vile smell. Soon, the smell slowly dissipated, and the house returned to its musty, rotten wood smell. We never did find the source of that rancid odor. We had carried heavy contractor bags out of the mansion and into a dumpster that was waiting outside that we had rented. The sickening smell from within the house now also filled the air outside. No matter where we went, the smell would be constantly burned into our nostrils. Many of the rooms were filled with the remnants of old furniture, much of it antique, but all of it long past its prime. It was nothing but rotten debris now. In one of the smaller rooms, there was an antique rocking horse, all cracked and faded with age. One of its legs was missing, long crumbled away, and it was left standing on 3 legs. While I was tearing down the mold-covered walls in that room, I would occasionally hear creaking noise. The noise of the rocking horse swaying upon the floor. However, when I would look to see what the source of that noise was, I would see nothing out of place. The horse was not rocking at all. After working in this room for a while, I became short of breath, and my eyes began to water. I chalked it up to the disgusting walls and the evidence of a rat and insect infestation within them. I was moving sluggishly that day, exhausted from both the heavy work and the lack of sleep from the night before. Hopefully, the second night would be better than the first. When night came, my uncle and I both resumed our places in our respective rooms. He fell asleep before I could even manage to tell him good night. I slowly climbed the stairs, each step making its own different sound, performing an eerie array of music as I ascended the staircase to my room on the second floor. I laid down upon the floor on a bed of blankets that I had made. I had hoped it would be more comfortable than the hardwood floor that I had slept on the night before. It wasn't much help. The night was cold. I awoke sometime in the night and covered myself in more blankets than I laid upon. It was so cold that I could see my breath in the room, and worse yet, I had to piss badly. I didn't want to get up because I knew it would be even colder, but I had to, or I was going to burst and then freeze to death in my own urine. I didn't want to be found in the morning with an obituary that read, "Died in his own urine." So I got up and went down the hallway toward the stairs. I had to pass the small child's room where the rocking horse had been. I had figured it was a child's room because of the faded and scratched clowns that had been painted on the rotten walls in the room, and the rocking horse, of course, was a pretty good sign. I happened to glance into the room as I walked past, and I saw movement. I stopped just past that room, rubbing my eyes a bit. I stepped back and, seeing that my eyes were not playing tricks on me, the rocking horse within the room was rocking violently back and forth, and then, before I could react, it just suddenly stopped. It didn't slow to a stop, it just stopped moving as if it had never been moving at all. Just moments after the rocking horse stopped, I was hit in the face with a heat that felt like I was standing in front of a campfire, and the rancid smell returned with it. The smell of rotting meat that we had smelled earlier was now again moving through the house. I nearly vomited when its smell filled my nose. I was terrified now. Something was here that didn't want us here. But we couldn't leave. We had to flip this house or we'd lose out on a lot of money. So, I had to suck it up. I was still scared. Almost so scared that I forgot that I even had to pee. But soon, the feeling made its way back into my bladder and I ran down the stairs and into the barely functional bathroom that was probably installed there when the first toilet was invented. After I had done my business, I couldn't find the courage to go back upstairs. A grown man, acting like a child, afraid of the dark. I just couldn't return up there that night. So I went into the living room and laid a few feet away from my uncle. The house was thankfully no longer cold. It was comfortable now. As I thought about it more and more, though, I realized something. It was only my room that was cold. The hallway was a comfortable temperature. It was comfortable down here, but my room was ice cold. What was going on here? I thought, as I forced myself to sleep. That was the first night I had seen them. The shadows that danced and fluttered beneath my eyelids. The obscure-shaped things that existed between the planes. At first, they were undefinable shapes that were blurred by darkness, but then appeared more and more clearly, my eyes adjusting to the darkness behind my eyelids. They were amorphous and asymmetrical blob-like beings that also appeared to be consisted of a black smoke, or even darkness itself. The darkness solidified, forming tentacles and antennae that sprouted from their small bodies, while in other places the dark smoke solidified into mouths and arms, with eyeballs within the palms of hands. The things were terrifying, but I could not look away. It was as if I was hypnotized by them. What are these things? I thought to myself. Is this really happening? Am I dreaming? I must be dreaming. This can't be real. What's happening? My mind raced from one thought to another. I was laying there, staring at these foreign beings, paralyzed with fear. Soon, the creatures began to fade back into the darkness from whence they came, and they left me to my arrest. I had to have been dreaming, but I don't remember going to sleep. I just remember waking up the next day. I awoke to the smell of bacon and eggs cooking. My uncle was in the kitchen next to the living room, cooking breakfast on his portable stovetop. Just plug it in and start cooking. I was surprised this place even had working outlets, much less ones that wouldn't set the house on fire when you plugged something into them. Though, we still had to replace the wiring. This place was old, and the wiring would start a fire eventually, if left unchecked. The third day was when it really started. The madness began here. This was the day that we worked on the living room, where I had slept the night prior, and my uncle had slept for the last 2 nights. We began gutting the walls here. Those disgusting walls filled with rot and decades of rat feces. Not long into the day's work, I came across a stone structure behind one of the walls. Upon removing more of the wooden wall in front of it, I saw that it was actually an old fireplace. It appeared to be very ornate, with images of angels carved into it, and it was made of beautiful marble. Who would cover up a fireplace like this? I thought to myself. Upon further inspection, I found that the fireplace had also been bricked up and sealed shut. Fireplace would be a good sales point, I said to my uncle, who was also amazed at the beautiful fireplace hidden behind the wall. I took a sledgehammer and began to smash out the bricks within the fireplace, being very careful not to damage the fireplace itself. The fireplace opened and a breeze rolled through. There it was again, that smell of rotting meat. Perhaps a raccoon or some other animal had gotten trapped up in the chimney, and with no means of escape, it probably died and left us that smell. However, we didn't find the body of any animal upon cleaning out the bricks of the now open fireplace. Instead, we found the remains of a long burned-out fire. Scorched logs and ash lay at the bottom of the chimney shaft. However, there was something strange here. Within the ashes laid a book bound with a dark brown leather that had been stitched together in patches. I now wish that I had never found that book, but my ignorant curiosity at the time was my undoing. I opened the book and gazed into those terrible pages.
Okay, so maybe I'll just pull an all-nighter. After all, ain't no rest for the wicked anyway. So, if you find yourself wide awake in trepidation, make sure to return here next weekend for more of that sleep-depriving terror you crave. And until then, remember to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.